What concept can you possibly learn in a grocery store that has the ability to influence your career for the rest of your life? That's an interesting question and an even bigger promise. Let's join Jason in the produce department of a grocery store and find out what this is all about. Jason?
Not long ago, on the way home from the office one evening, I stopped by a local grocery store to do some marketing. Inside the grocery store, I made the most incredible discovery. In fact, it turned out to be the single most valuable business lesson I've ever learned, and I think it might be the same thing for you. Come on inside the store, let me show you what happened. My first stop in the grocery store was here in the produce department, and the first item I paused to pick up was this, a head of iceberg lettuce. Now, the price today on this head of iceberg lettuce is 69 cents a head. I thought, well, maybe I'll have something else for my dinner salad tonight, and I set the iceberg lettuce down and I moved a few feet further. What do you think I found? Well, there it was, the identical head of iceberg lettuce, but this time the iceberg lettuce was $5 a head. Now wait a minute, how in the world is that possible? How can you charge 69 cents for a head of iceberg lettuce and then a few feet away charge $5 for the head of iceberg lettuce? I've asked that question to a lot of people around the world, and I've had some fascinating responses. Somebody said, well, in order to get $5 for a head of iceberg lettuce, it must be hydroponically grown. Others have said, no, it's got to be pesticide-free. Still others have said, I bet they put a big label on it and they sell it to yuppies and those people who don't care what they pay for their food. Well, none of those responses are the correct one, but I know it, and here's what it is. In order to take this 69-cent head of lettuce and charge $5 for it, what you need to do is this. You need to pick the lettuce, you need to wash it, you need to chop it, you need to put it in a bag, and you need to start selling salad instead of lettuce. Well, after that discovery in the grocery store, I went to one of my neighbors, Ed Zeller, who for years was the king of produce in the west coast of the United States, and I asked for kind of an economics lesson on lettuce. Here's what he told me. That head of lettuce, which sells for about 69 cents in a grocery store, probably cost the store somewhere between 30 and 35 cents. The farmer probably got somewhere between 15 and 20 cents for the head of lettuce, but of course the farmer had to raise it. How much profit do you think was in it for the farmer? Well, by most estimates, somewhere between 1 and 2 pennies. On the other hand, consider the margins associated when you're selling salad, not selling lettuce. Which brings up a real important question for you. What business are you going to be in? Are you going to be in the commodity or lettuce business, or are you going to be in the value-driven business, offering a new value, driving a new value in the marketplace? And that is perhaps the single most important question that you can ask yourself about your career. One of the nation's experts on taking commodities and turning them into value-driven services and products is an author and a lecturer and a professor at Wake Forest University, Dr. Jim Makins. Recently, we had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Makins about the issue of turning lettuce into salad. Dr. Makins, recently I saw you speak and you discussed criteria for being able to determine when a product, good, or service has gone from basically being a value-driven product to a commodity. Could you take us through that?
Sure, I'll be happy to, Jason. And incidentally, that's an extremely important topic today because that is precisely what is happening. So if these folks are telling you that they don't see a lot of difference in the products and the services of that particular category which you're selling, that's a big warning sign. And that's going on in industry after industry. People are saying, you know, I really don't see much difference in them. A second thing, I think, is the overemphasis, and this is really the result of marketing. The overemphasis by marketing on such things as cents off or price coupons or all kinds of price gimmicks. Now, it doesn't take a genius, honestly, to give away a product, and it takes even a little brighter genius, but not much, to say, I will sell this at a substantial discount. And unfortunately, that's exactly what's happening in a lot of marketing departments these days. Instead of finding ways to continue a product or service as a product and differentiate it, they're giving the thing away or giving discounts on it. So that's another warning. And then, of course, another warning, and this is a biggie if you've gotten to this point. If you've gotten to this point where your industry is somehow talking about something like an auction for prices or a bidding system for prices, and I've heard this in industries, if they're talking about this, you had better believe that you're right at the edge of being a commodity.
Relate this, if you would, to the broadcasting industry.
Well, I heard this precise thing in broadcasting, as a matter of fact, where a manager in television was saying, you know, what we're going to do is to put an auction out there, and it'll be an auction every day for our advertising. And what we'll do is put this out on the internet, and we'll broadcast this through the internet to our customers, and we'll just let them bid on what they think is the best price for our product, that is, our service. Well, what you're saying is that your product, your service, is not any different than essentially going to a livestock auction and watching a group of 50 pigs or 50 cattle come through there, and then going through all the mumble-jumble they go through, and finally a price is arrived at. That's exactly the same thing. And we're dealing with a commodity when we're talking about live steers, and apparently many people are saying we're getting into a commodity situation in broadcasting.
Okay, what other criteria are there, Dr. Makins?
Well, the other criteria, I think, is that if your people, that is your management and your people, are continuously talking about price, and the price pressures in the marketplace, as opposed to talking about creativity and what we can do to put ourselves into a situation so that we are indeed different from somebody else, then I think that's a big warning sign, and you'll hear that throughout the entire organization.
What's inherently wrong with something becoming a commodity?
Well, the only problem with becoming a commodity is that if you're going to allow yourself, your industry, your product to become a commodity, then you had better realize the concept that Jack Welch has made so famous from General Electric, in which he essentially has said, in any industry, there are only going to be a handful of survivors, and I think he has said something like 2 or 3, and that if you don't think you can be one of the 2 or 3, you'd better find a way to get out. Because the thing is going to be dependent on price, and that means that what you're going to be emphasizing is strictly in the area of cost cutting, cost improvements.
Dr. Makins, let me ask you this question. One of the thoughts I've had is that if you're in a commodity marketplace, you're absolutely correct. There's a constant attention to cutting prices, and which brings up the question, how far can you cut prices? And I guess the answer to that is, how long is a piece of string? But the other thought that I've had is this. I guess the only way that I can think of to be assured of making money in the commodity marketplace, I think of OPEC, and I think of the De Beers family. I guess the only way to assure yourself of making money in the commodity business is to control the supply.
Well, there's a good deal of truth in that. That's correct. And that's, of course, one of the reasons. If you look at people who are trying to compete in the commodities market, and certainly I think the best example of that is that the farmer anywhere in the world these days who has a non-branded kind of product is extremely subject to this. And he simply cannot do much to control his total revenue at the end of the year. I mean, what he tries to do is add more livestock or be a bit more efficient in the fields. But frankly, he's not going to be very successful in the long run doing that. He has absolutely no control over his destiny.
Dr. Makins, could you give me examples of a couple of products that really had the market and blew it by allowing themselves to become commodities?
Well, in terms of products which I think are blowing it right now, let's look at the cereal market. When I was a kid, there were 2 or 3 cereals, or 4 maybe, that were extremely popular. And frankly, when I was a kid, if you didn't eat Wheaties, you weren't a champion. Well, today, what's happening in the cereal market is that the cereal companies have allowed, again, through this price deterioration and all of this business with emphasis on couponing and all of this, and without really coming in with new exciting products, they just simply come in with what we call line extensions. Not really exciting, not really creative, and the public realizes that. So finally they get themselves into a position in which now, currently, today, the cereal industry is in a tough battle. And what are they doing? Prices are being cut, and the cereal companies are faltering.
Would you kind of bring this into focus for me as it relates to broadcasting, radio and television? Because my sense is that the members of the electronic media are someplace on the journey to having what they sell their clients become a commodity.
Oh, I think very clearly so. From what I have seen in the industry, I'm quite certain that that is occurring. If you talk, as an example, going back to my first point, if you talk to the average listener or the average viewer in any market, I'm not so confident they can differentiate between stations. And what is happening in that industry, in addition to that, is that salespeople are being influenced by a big intermediary called an advertising agency, and advertising agencies are looking at these as essentially commodities. Now, whether they do or not remains to be seen, but they tell the salespeople, well, you're essentially all the same, and what I'm going to grade you on is this point kind of system, and therefore we'll kind of dictate the price to you. And of course, some of the larger buyers have also found that they can do much the same thing, and unfortunately, many of the salespeople in this industry have not learned to truly sell on a differentiated basis, on a segmented basis as to what we can offer to a client, and certainly not are willing to say, our price is and ought to be a little higher than others because, frankly, we reach a different market. And it's going to accomplish certain objectives for you and for your buyers and for others that are influenced by this, and therefore we are not a commodity. But so many salespeople, as I see it, take the easy route. They're looking for volume and not looking at margins, not looking at what it's going to do for the overall organization, and therefore they dig right to the bottom of the price, and it's a giveaway.
I have a final comment and question for you, Dr. Makins. I have a friend who runs IBM in Australia, and when I was asking him how long he had been in the computer business, he said, you have to understand, I've never been in the computer business, I've never sold a box. He said, we sell solutions. If you'll pick up the yellow pages today, you'll see that telephony companies are selling communication solutions. Computer companies are trying to sell database solutions. We see the word solution being used a lot. Is offering solutions one way, if you will, of adding value to a good product or service on the verge of becoming a commodity, turning it into a solution?
Jason, absolutely. I mean, that's where the heart and soul of all this is. And frankly, it's not a new concept. If we go back to the very earliest sales books that were ever written, or the sales manuals, they talked about features and benefits. And that if you just, as a salesperson, go out there and talk about features, that I have more horsepower, or mine is greener than yours, or bigger, or wider, whatever, that isn't going to do it. We've got to talk about the benefits that this product or service extends. And we need to teach everybody in the organization that we are selling solutions, we're selling benefits. And as a result, our people who are out there talking with clients need to understand, first of all, who those clients are. They need to understand their problems. They need to understand where their clients want to go. They need to understand the competitive environment. And then, if they can offer them a solution to the problems they are facing, then frankly, price is not the big issue. The big issue at that point is, can I do something to assist you to better yourself competitively and to assist in the solution to a problem or an opportunity that you're facing. It's old-time sales thinking, and it's worked for centuries, frankly. The problem is that we've gotten away from it. We need to think about real account management, where our people are really managing, working with those accounts. They're not just dropping in occasionally, leaving behind a gimmick, a business card, a price list, and saying, you know, when you got some business, call me. That's not it. We need to be in there working with those people and finding solutions for them.
Thank you, Dr. Makins. Well then, according to what we've just heard, the challenge is to find a way to create sufficient value for your good, product, or service so as to remove yourself from the commodity marketplace. In this instance, the good, product, or service we're talking about is you. As an account executive, how will you go about removing yourself from the commodity marketplace? Most media account executives simply call on advertisers, service the budget or the dollars that already exist, and allow themselves to be endlessly compared to other members of the media. As a result, the only issue that most account executives have to talk about with their clients is price. And when that happens, the only place for the price to go is down. One of my friends is a woman who owns a huge Chevrolet dealership in the middle of America. She spends a lot of money on radio, cable, and broadcast television. Now, here's how she negotiates. Once a year, as she loves to tell the story, she calls in the rep, as she calls them, from the top-rated television station and the rep from the top-rated radio station. She proceeds to outline her plans for the next year, and then she tells them what she's willing to pay. And as she tells the story in her words, beats them up one side and down the other, and oftentimes sends them away convinced they'll never get another dollar of her money. She wants a deal, she screams at them, the best deal they have, or forget it and don't come back. Now, because these reps are all on commission and her business represents a big portion of their income, they go back to their stations and they do what she knows they're going to do, her bidding. They become her agent inside the media facility. They become price agents. They beg the boss for a deal, for a lowered price, for lots of bonus spots, maybe even a trip for her and her husband. In fact, many reps, as opposed to account managers, spend more time on their knees begging their managers for deals than they actually do in front of their clients. Well, finally, here's what happens. The reps from the top-rated stations get their best deals together and return and give them to my friend, who then beats them up again and gains even more concessions, or as she says, Jason, I get every drop of blood out of the deal I can. Then, after they've presented their best deals and she gathers their best shot proposals, she tells them she's going to call them in a few days, and then she proceeds to call in all the other stations in the marketplace, shows them the deals she's getting from the top-rated facilities, and explains that if they want any of her business, they're going to have to beat these prices. And of course, what do you think happens? They always do. As she concludes her media story, she always starts laughing about the things the media reps do to make her like them and their attempts at building relationships with her. She laughs about the free concert tickets, the parties, the dinners, but she always concludes the stories of these relationship-building attempts by saying, well, why in the world would I want to have a relationship with most of these people? Most aren't in my league, but let them think whatever they like. Now, perhaps you're thinking this woman is a made-up character for a story to be used for purposes of example. No. She's quite real, quite successful, and she plays the media like a banjo. Now, maybe you think she's the exception. You'd be wrong. I would argue that she's the model. She's the rule. And that most local broadcast business gets done on a basis of price or bonus spots, because most account executives don't have anything else to talk about. Finally, maybe you're surprised that I consider her my good friend. Maybe you found her portrait unflattering. To the contrary, she's one of the friendliest, most astute, successful, and generous businesswomen and human beings I've ever met. I'm proud to count her as a friend. Are you familiar with the age-old question, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Well, that question really works here. Did my friend begin her career beating up reps and treating them that way and doing business the way she does? Or one day did she finally say to herself, well, if all these reps can talk about is rates, ratings, and how many free spots they're going to give me, I may as well play it for all it's worth. I'll bet money that it's the latter scenario. Parenthetically, the last time I was with her, I asked her a whole bunch of questions about her and about what she wanted to achieve with her business. I asked her, what do you really want to do? And you know what she said? She said she wanted to be the largest female-owned car dealership in the world. So I asked her, how many more cars would you have to sell to be able to be the largest female-owned dealership in the world? She said that she would need to sell an extra 80 to 100 cars monthly. So I asked her how much gross profit, extra gross profit, that would give her, because I know she also sells a lot of trucks, and she said, well, pretty good grosses. She would get an additional $120,000 a month in gross profit. I then asked her how much of that $120,000 she would spend to achieve her dream. You know what she said? Get ready. All of it. Well, that, of course, begged one final question I had to ask. I looked at her and said, have you ever talked about this dream with any one of the radio or television stations? She looked at me with a deadpan, almost vacant look in her eyes and said, why would I talk to them about it? In her market, at least, the members of the media have turned advertising into a pure commodity. And I promise you, I assure you, that to some extent, the same is true of your market. The question then is a big one. What can be done about it? Well, there are really only two possibilities. The first is that all the members of the media get together and agree on what they're going to charge for their advertising and have everyone in the market agree to raise their prices and their rates. Well, the day they do that, don't pass go directly to jail. It's against the law. It's collusion. So what can be done? Well, it's up to you, and it's on your shoulders. If change is to take place, it will be because of your efforts and the way you model yourself in the marketplace with your clients. Are you going to be a commodity trader, or are you going to drive value in the marketplace? The way you respond to that question will have significant ramifications, not only on your income, your career, your self-esteem, but may very well dramatically alter your entire life. Well, let's do a quick review of Dr. Macon's criteria for knowing if you're in the commodity business. Remember, number one, he says that if the marketplace says they're all the same, you just might be a commodity rep. Two, if the marketplace sets the price, or if there's a bid system for pricing, you just might be a commodity rep. Three, if you constantly think price, you just might be a commodity rep. Number four, if management thinks price, you just might be a commodity rep. And five, if there are price wars in the marketplace, you just might be a commodity rep. And what's so bad about being a commodity rep? Several things. I guess probably most importantly, you'll never be a master of your own destiny. The marketplace, not you, will actually decide how much you can earn and how you're going to be seen by others. You know, any historical examination of commodity-based marketplaces demonstrates that as the commodity matures, there's continued downward pressure on margins, with constant cost reductions the only way to survive. But for me, most importantly, the reason I would not want to be viewed as a commodity rep is this, and listen very carefully. As Studs Terkel wrote in one of his recent bestsellers, Working, the problem with jobs is that they don't feed the soul. Jobs aren't big enough for people. People, he wrote, need a high level of social purpose. Their soul has to be fed as well. Well, how in the world can you, a single account executive or account manager, drive a new value in the marketplace? How can you remove yourself from the fray associated with price-driven commodity trading? Well, just stick around, because our work has just begun. And the next time we get together, we're going to provide you the tactics that will allow you to stop selling lettuce and begin selling salad. I'm Jason Jennings. I'll see you then.
You have a big decision to make. Are you going to sell lettuce or are you going to sell salad? Do you see yourself as a commodity trader or as a business leader, someone driving a new value into the marketplace? As Jason pointed out, you can't do both. It's an all or nothing proposition. Your decision will affect you for the rest of your career and the rest of your life. Do you want to sell spots, or do you want a career with a higher level of social purpose, crafting solutions for your prospects and being seen as someone who brings value? A partner, not a peddler.